Hi everyone, it's Jen again. Hope you all been having a good week. This week the weather is starting to finally feel like fall, and it's been really nice out. I did try to take a walk last weekend, and I'll try to take another walk this weekend, I think. So this week I have something of a little bit of a different video. This is something that I did basically Friday afternoon after work, and then Saturday morning when I came home I wrapped it up. It was sort of done on a whim. I started watching some conference talks about the upcoming release of Procreate Dreams, and I'm really excited for the potential of this software. I've been super happy with Procreate just as kind of a drawing software. It really helped reignite just my love for drawing, and you can tell by the design of the program that it was really made with the idea of just making art more fun and accessible and intuitive for, I think, particularly traditional artists like myself switching to the digital workflow. So it's always my first go-to whenever I talk to somebody who comes from a more traditional art background who's looking to transition into digital art, because it's kind of the only drawing software that I've ever used, along with the Apple Pencil, that has really kind of felt enough like traditional drawing to kind of still bring me into that headspace where it's decompressing and it's fun and relaxing experience for me. So I'm really looking forward to I guess going back to my roots a little bit with my more frame by frame animation instead of doing so much kind of vector and puppeting style animation. And what I've seen of the software, I think is going to be a pretty good, at least I'm hoping that it's going to be a pretty good, fairly easy transition between doing frame by frame animation and doing kind of more vector style animation. We'll see when it comes out, but regardless, I have a lot of hopes for the software, that it will be kind of a fun way of going back to doing some animation. So while I was sort of anticipating the release of Procreate Dreams, I just kind of had an itch to do a really short little animation, and I realized that I hadn't really used Procreate's animation assistant. I hadn't really given it a try, so that's what this little exercise was. And yeah, it was just kind of a nice way to pass an afternoon. This is one of those things where animation is a lot of work, but when you're just kind of sort of doing it for fun, it doesn't really feel as much work as it is, as far as if you count the number of physical drawings and having to paint each frame and stuff. On paper, if I was planning out a workflow, then yeah, that would be a lot of work. But when you're doing it because you just kind of have an itch to just do something for no particular reason, it doesn't really feel like work. So this week was, I don't know if this is TMI. I feel like this is one of the things that people don't want to acknowledge or talk about in society, but it was my monthly cycle, and if I'm honest, that always puts a halt to my productivity. Honestly, the older I get, cycles kind of change, hormone levels kind of change, your physical body changes. These days, it's not so much about mood, because I've been very careful with making sure that my iron and vitamin D and vitamin B levels are all fairly more on track than they've probably been in my life. I'm very cognizant to my moods, and I spent a lot of time working on myself and working through my emotions and my sensitivity, growing up, I guess, in an age where being introverted, being highly sensitive, and wanting to have deep connections with people was just kind of weaponized against me a lot. I spent a lot of time just being gaslit, being made to feel like I'm crazy or that I'm a problem, because of just the way I am. And I think that I've worked pretty hard on trying to better communicate and communicate in more productive ways with people. But I'm also very hyper aware, I guess, of like where my moods and my feelings are like coming from. And I can pretty much tell these days, like if it's more on a chemical level or more on an emotional level. So yeah, with those things worked out, I still sometimes just have months where I feel like I was hit by a truck. My whole body's just like sore and tired, and I'm exhausted for like no good reason other than biological functions. So yay, that was one of these weeks for me. I still try to get a little bit of work done on Arcane Dice Wars every day with the scripting. But doing this animation was just kind of my way of like, I guess, keeping myself busy and doing something that brought me joy, but at the same time, like, was a kind of break from like what I have been working on. Again, just for the sake of like having fun with it. I sometimes think about like doing my projects and my art sort of like sand mandalas, where it's more important like the process of going through it and what fun I'm having in the moment of working on it. And it really brings me back to like when I was doing art as a child, and I would just do it all the time, and it wasn't about like, oh, you know, look how productive I was, or look how much I got accomplished, or even like saving it. Like, you know, a lot of times when you're a kid, you just amass like piles and piles of paper, and eventually they all just kind of get thrown out. So yeah, if nothing ever happens with this animation and it just gets thrown out, then that's fine. I was kind of thinking in the back of my mind, well, I would love to go and see if I can smooth it out and see how easy it is for me to smooth it out when Procreate Dreams comes out. So I will be saving these frames to possibly import and play around with when that does come out. But yeah, I might just start with something new as well. Speaking a little bit more about Procreate Dreams, I've been very impressed with what I've kind of heard about its performance so far, and in some ways it sounds like it can do some things that even top-end like video editing software struggles with. All this on like the iPad, and supposedly it's going to be able to also run on like older iPads, not necessarily just like the newest M1, M2 iPad Pros. So we'll see. But it sort of reminded me like back around like the beginning of 2020. I was sort of looking at technology trends, and I was speculating kind of to myself that like hardware was eventually going to kind of run into a just lack of like physical space, that eventually you know, processors and everything weren't going to be able to just keep on exponentially like becoming more powerful, and that a lot of like optimization and like improvements were going to have to be made more on like the software end to sort of take more advantage of like multi-cores and multi-threads and stuff like that. Maybe somebody who knows more about computers and programming and performance can like let me know their thoughts on that, because again, this was just like super general impressions that I had as a layman who was just reading like little quick articles about like the top like 10 technology trends or something of like the future and things like that. So this was just a random theory that I sort of like had in my mind, and I don't know how much validity there is to it, but I was thinking, well, maybe Procreate Dreams can do so much just on the iPads because it was a software that was kind of built from the ground up with performance being like a top priority in mind. So especially with animation, it's super important for animators to be able to kind of see accurate timing as they are animating, especially if you're doing things kind of like frame by frame the more traditional way. So I was really happy to see Procreate Dreams sort of look like they, instead of so much emphasis kind of like being brought to like automating productivity with like sort of like AI, a lot of AI type tools have been like very like being pushed for. It was nice to see a sort of design philosophy that had more in mind the experience of the artist, to just make things like more fun and intuitive, and sort of take some of the annoying, tedious things about animation, more from like the technical point of view, and make it a little bit more fun. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. It's not so much that it's going to do work for you, I don't think. I think it's going to be more from the design philosophy of just sort of like making these things like more fun again. So that's where I've been at. Hope you have a good upcoming week, and don't forget to enjoy the process. Bye now.